It's the old gang.
Yeah, hey, that's true.
So I think that the 20th, we got for the last meeting.
Yeah. Just in time for the roast.
Yeah.
All right, it's 10 o'clock. Good morning, everybody. For 9th, I'll call the meeting to order at 10 a.m. and recognize that we're conducting our business today in Tloquet territory and ask first for a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. None opposed? Motion carried. And we have some, thank you, moved and seconded. Any errors or omissions from the minutes? All right. All in favor? Thank you. None opposed? Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I wanted to take 2 minutes to talk about this municipal regional district tax, tourism tax we'll call it. Initially, it was created by the government to promote tourism, and rightly so. Tourism has gone up and down over the years. It's my opinion, however, that Tofino has moved and matured with regards to that matter into a new era. We've moved into what's been coined in year forms on cell phones and computers. By the time the people come here, they have already decided to come here and have made a multi-thousand-dollar commitment, maybe 5 or more for a family. And it is my opinion that we're not adding any value by having a physical tourism structure once they arrive here. That's my opinion. On the balance of probabilities, I think it's a reasonable argument to say that that is the case. If indeed we do want to build a big tourism facility here, then what is the justification of why that is necessary and how that will affect us? And once it affects us, how will we deal with the increased tourism that it produces? In other words, we're aggravating a problem by asking for more without solving the issues that we already have. For that reason, I recommend that we look at ways on how to use the money to service the tourists that we already have, as opposed to looking.
Okay, the next item is the mayor's report. I didn't have anything, except there's something I did want to note, and we have one more council meeting before this term ends, and I learned this morning that Councillor Thick will not be at that meeting, which means today is Councillor Thick's last council meeting. So this is a little off, as I'm sure others will, but I just wanted to take a moment to recognize you, Councillor Thick, and 7 years of persistence and diligence and awfully good job of doing your homework, and it has been such a pleasure for me to serve with you and to have you as part of this team, and we are going to miss you, or the town will miss you and your services here, so I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
And there'll be more to come, but you won't hear it, so we'll just tape it. We're going to move into delegations, and we have 2 today, and our first delegation is from Yarmo, so your 10 minutes are good to go, and thank you again for coming.
Thank you for taking the minutes of Tofino. So in this particular presentation, I'm looking at the parking in lieu bylaw. We have identified that our community has too many cars in the past. And so we thought, well, we don't want it, we want. However, we get over 1 million people, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of cars, coming here because we're at the end of the road and we're very desirable. We identified that there are too many cars, so what did we decide to do? We decided to take away places for the cars to go to. We acted in ways which reduce places where they should go to. In other words, it seems reasonable to me if you identify to move them out of your streets. You wouldn't remove the parking that you already have. It's illogical. One way we did this is by introducing the parking in lieu bylaw in 2012. Essentially what we did is we said, we're having trouble issuing business licenses because in place for 3 customers, so let's change it. Let's make the requirement 1 parking place for 5 customers. And voila, bingo bango, we can issue more business licenses for more restaurants and make our economy thrive. However, in lieu means in place of. So who executes this plan that the district does it, they get something for it. As it happens, We did not have alternate parking when we made the plan. In other words, the business owner didn't have the space to make the parking, and we did not have the parking. We did not build alternate parking after we made the plan, $300,000. I may be wrong. Accurate numbers are public record. We didn't build parking with it. As far as I can tell, we used the money to build wide sidewalks and bike lanes. And we actually used it to reduce parking. Those are facts. I triple checked them. Here's what we thought when we were making plans for the community. We thought we wouldn't put parking on the north side. We thought we would use angled parking, a net reduction. Why? Because if you make parking like this, you can fit 1 car per 10 square meters, roughly. If you make parking like this, you can fit 1 car per 12.5 square meters. This space is wasted from a community perspective. It's just going to be rebuilt. You can actually fit 1 car per 6.8 square meters. So that's a 40% reduction in the usefulness of the off-street area, on-street area as parking. This is from the Local Government Act, and I'd like, now I'm not, if you want, you can go look this up. I put it up there as an excerpt. This is the statement that I'd like us to focus on. The money collected must use these funds only for that purpose. That purpose is clearly defined as build parking. So I'm left with the short circuit where we use the money to reduce parking. So the theme of my talk is the effect on the residents of Tofino. Not very nice. The 5 customers per parking place has created a deficit of about 100 parking places, my estimate. We can debate about that if required. And this business here has created another deficit. We would not now have such a acute parking problem. So we have achieved what we asked for. I'm left with the question, why did we choose to act in these ways? But we don't need to hunt for answers right now. I am just stating per parking place as opposed to 3. So the change is summarized. We lost 100 places due to the parking in lieu bylaw. We lost dozens of places due to the way we built our sidewalks. And we lost another 100 places due to the way that we issued the parking strategy bylaw. By the way, that was called the parking strategy. I would summarize the strategy as what is the best way to make parking horrible in Tofino. I can't think of any other purpose for it. Thank you.
I don't think so. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on, but just before we do, sorry to be the fire marshal here, but can we move the chairs all over so that we keep a clear, it's always nice to have a full audience. It does happen at the end of a council term, doesn't it? Thanks, everybody. That's great. Okay, our next delegation contacted me in advance of today to ask for the possibility of a 5-minute extension. So I just wanted to see now if we could extend the Tourism Tofino delegation by 5 minutes. Does anybody disagree? Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you.
Thanks very much for the opportunity to present our 1-year tactical plan for 2019 today for your information. So the plan consists of 3 sections. The 5-year strategic overview, which is updated annually, the 2019 project plan that includes and the 2019 strategies. So pages 1 and 2 in the package that was provided to you. I'll also cover the budget, which is on page 6 in your package. So we've done some updates this year to the 5-year strategic overview, the addition of brand positioning and promise, addition of value statements for each major category of work, the creation of a linear path from the strategic goals, so those 5-year goals, through to the annual strategies and tactics. And then we've added more quantitative measures wherever we have been able to. Again, in your package, you'll have more information. So the vision statement has been simplified to 2, Tofino will be recognized as one of North America's premier. Why does Tourism Tofino exist? It is to generate customers for our members and economic benefits for our community while recognizing our responsibilities to residents, the environment, and our guests. Every activity that we engage in, whether it is promotion, visitor servicing, between December 2017 and April 2018, we conducted many different sessions with residents. So we connected with residents, members, stakeholders, staff, and board through an engagement process designed to inform our visitor etiquette project and to do a brand refresh, both which will guide us in everything that we do. The brand positioning states that Tofino's well-being is built upon a foundation of exceptional experiences that uplift bodies, minds, and spirits while connecting visitors to Tofino's unique, genuine West Coast peoples, eclectic culture, and natural places. We promise our guests, forest, with all who choose to share in this cherished place. So it's an invitation to share in this place that we'll be extending. Our strategic direction consists of 5 major categories of work, starting with governance and corporate responsibility. Our value statement is to operate in a fiscally and operationally responsible manner. Engaged board of directors, which we're currently very fortunate to have. Strategies include ensuring that our society documentation and tactical plans are available to members, that we increase non-MRDT revenues by creating member advertising opportunities and grow our retail sales at the visitor center, utilize excellent financial practices and Canadian accounting standards, improve our communication with members by implementing real-time communication platform, conduct an annual member survey to encourage more input from members, and continue with ongoing board development. For the marketing category, our value statement is to generate visitor demand aligned with community capacity. The 2 goals are to increase overnight visitation during the spring, fall, and winter, at times when businesses and the community have capacity and growth will not negatively impact the resident way of life. In 2019, the majority of our advertising will be focusing on spring and fall first. The second goal is to protect those current levels of summer business. That's the foundation of the tourism industry and of the community here. We always have to remember that half of our visitors are first-time visitors. Preparation takes place before they're searching online. They have to understand that this is a great place. They have to hear about it and be inspired enough to start to then do their research online to learn more about the destination. So that's why people recognize that this beautiful place exists, inspiring them to, we always have to kind of reflect on the fact that 50% of people who come here are first-timers. So that's that 50% that we are trying to inspire to select Tofino. And of course, we want to make sure that we can keep that summer season robust, as it is foundational. For years in the form of fixed roof accommodation occupancy targets. So what you can see here is the red line is the 2018 occupancy to date, and the blue line is our target for 2022. The shaded areas show the spring and fall growth opportunity that we'll be actioning. Our strategies include building brand consistency. So this target audience is not defined by age or gender. It's those people who hold the values and interests that align with Tofino's. Our targets look for a connection with their travels. They appreciate the raw power of the elements. They respect where they travel and they're considerate. They want the feeling of rejuvenation. They care for the environment. We will utilize highly targeted types of promotion to reach them. Our industry has told us that they need business in the non-peak and midweek time periods, and so we'll facilitate the development of midweek experiences. Adult learning and meetings and retreats will be key areas of focus for us. And we will also continue to exposure with Tourism Vancouver Island, Destination British Columbia, Destination Canada also allows us to have a presence in long-haul international markets. So this is just a quick example of some of the adjustments that we'll be making to our branding. And to add is on the left. It says, get on board. Surfing and Sup, sandy beaches, waves, some palm trees, and cold water surfing. It's a little difficult to read the red, but here's how we think we would change it up, something like this. Build a connection. Surfing and sup, connect with the place. The value statement for the visitor services major category is to welcome visitors to our community as we would friends to our home. Our goal is to increase visitor spending, longer stays, and repeat visits. And to do this, we must generate more visitor activity, whether that be online, on the phone, or in person. The more success we will have in converting their inquiries to bookings, and more people will be inspired to book an excursion, try a new restaurant, extend their stays, or return again for a longer stay, or what Tofino is. And we'll use mobile and social outreach to engage visitors. The next major category is destination management. Our value is that our visitors will experience positive impressions from our work. And we have 4 goals: to construct an inspiring and productive visitor center. This is considered an MRDT project, and it's a big one. To build knowledge and seize teen initiatives. To support experience enhancement and development. And to be an informed tourism community. Our strategies will be to replace the visitor center with that one that reflects the sense of place, cultural heritage, and resident values. We will be working with the museum on the cultural heritage portion and also hope to collaborate with First Nations. Then provide easy-to-use staff onboarding tools and educate visitors on expected behaviors and regulations. So our objective is to have our members using the tools that we have produced so far, the welcome brochure, tips and regulation sheet, as well as our information that's posted on our website. To visitors, we currently promote several galleries and cultural events, and the Chamber will also be adding a new tourism option to their artisan membership category. This means that Tourism Tofino will now be able to actively promote artisans that choose the tourism option when they purchase or renew their Chamber membership. So this is a really positive move forward that opens community, and I know Mo Douglas is going to be presenting here shortly as well. So we look forward to working closely on that. And we will also continue to support and promote the shuttle bus service by paying for bus stop signs, the schedule advertising, and bus wrap branding. We'll conduct regular research to inform our decision-making and communicate the value of tourism. Last major category of collaboration and strategic alliances. Our value is to collaborate, communicate, and coordinate with members, industry, and community partners on common objectives. Our goals are to work closely with you on tourism development and management, to support the Tourism Industry Association of BC, the Chamber, and the Tofino Business Association on tourism. Our strategies are to participate in tourism-related initiatives such as the Tourism Master Plan process and CDAC and others that arise, to provide you with guest input. Something that we can provide back to the district is guest input to help inform the RMI and tourism industry and work together with our tourism partners for the greatest positive results. On to the budget. So you do have the detailed budget in your packages, but I've summarized it in a few graphs here. This one shows our 2019 revenue streams. These are the operating revenues, not the capital revenues that are being put aside for that visitor center. So 92% provincial grants in the form of Destination BC Visitor Center Operating Grant and Canada Summer Jobs Funding, and 1% from member advertising. So this is a new area, so we're dipping our toes in the water on that one. In terms of expense, they're divided into 4 buckets: marketing at 51%, visitor services at 23%, administration at 21%, and destination management at 5%. Any new projects in 2019 to that destination management bucket. And then of the marketing bucket, you can see that we spend just under $300,000 in advertising. So this is quite actually a small budget when you consider it goes across the whole year. So we make sure that every dollar is used efficiently and reaches that target. Media, producing brochures, photography, and videos together make up 11%, while festivals and events marketing 5%. And the wages and benefits associated with doing the marketing and the media relations are 36%. And that concludes my presentation.
Are there any questions from council? I'm sure there are. Who wants to start?
I'll start.
Okay, Councillor McMaster.
Going back to expand a little bit on recognising our responsibilities to residents.
Sure.
Because I think Tourism Tofino is doing an excellent job of promoting tourism. I think
Well, and so what is meant by that is that our work will be focused on generating economic benefits, further economic benefits at those times when the community has the capacity to absorb. Let me look at the occupancy graph. You can see, this is, whoop. So summer is pretty full, right? And that's really the time period where the pressures, I think, are felt more during the rest of the year for growth. Yet it's not growth at that 97 and 98% peak occupancy. So there is room within the accommodation sector and in the tour operator sector to absorb that. And it is, I think, reasonable to resort for the residents. So that's really what we have to watch. We always have to watch that balance and be the economic generator that we are, but consciously, not just let loose. It's very much consciously done. Does that help?
no, not really. That's my opinion anyway. So.
And I would expand that it is the tourism industry. There's many businesses that are marketing, right? So the collective industry is looking after generating these economic benefits. Tourism Tofino is one portion of that, and yes, we do carry the hierarchy is Tofino first. So definitely we have that responsibility.
Thank you. Councillor Bart?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks very much, Nancy. And that was, I very much enjoyed being able to sit in on the Tourism Tofino meeting and hear the discussion. As you know, there's a motion that we put forward asking staff to report back to us on how to create kind of tourism. I certainly called it like a destination management sort of body that could address tourism impact issues and look at kind of setting up this conversation between Tourism Tofino and context I come from. I still have some challenges around some of the language or permissions that Tourism Tofino uses to kind of take a different perspective or to support a bit of what Councillor McMaster's talking about. For example, there's an overlay of saying to this community, this is what you are, whereas the language might have been something toward a community that welcomes visitors year-round. Just, it as opposed to the tourism industry saying, well, this is what really we are or need to be. So also, in terms of the challenges, we have this disconnect between who your messaging is going out to and attracting and who is coming and what there is for them when they come. And so the fact sort of turnover for budget travelers at a level that we end up with people parked on the street and and creating neighborhood impacts and all of those things. So you're promoting the surfing very well and many other things very well, but again, this capacity issue. Like how many surfboards, how much can happen on our beaches. And Mackenzie Beach the other day, 25 dogs. Is that a part of the, surfers leaving their dogs on the beach, or is it other things? I don't know exactly what the source of the problem is, but do we understand it even enough to know where we're hyping and And there was a couple of other things, if I may, just, okay, I'll leave that. There's also, and I am so eager for this body to happen and go forward, because I think Tourism Tofino will be very enriched by it in terms of its messaging and how, it was something about that we would be in dialogue with the community to inform the marketing organization about what it is that we're bringing people to. And so, you know, it's kind of, it sets that off a bit for me. I was curious what happened to the ambassador program. I suppose I should know the answer to this, but why Tourism Tofino isn't funding it anymore? I didn't
We
see.
are.
Oh, you are,
Yeah,
okay. I
just
just
say
didn't
no.
see it in the plan. I guess in terms of inclusion around First Nations, just hoping that it is really a vigorous engagement, that it's more not what the federal government has gotten into, the consultation trap. And that comes to the visitor center in terms of, again, that public piece. I don't know if in your plan, when you've got the actual building plans or you're laying out, if, you know, there's going to be any kind of open house or opportunity for community input and feedback into what's being planned for that visitor center.
What we do hope to engage various center, definitely. And as I mentioned, the museum, hopefully First Nations, have had initial conversations with CBT as well as Lily in her group. So, you know, we certainly want it to be a place of, these are the things that are important to people who live here.
Okay,
So
and
that's,
so,
and I mean, it's a visitor center as well.
yeah,
So
I appreciate that, Nancy, but a lot of money is going into this development, and I think, unlike the situation across the street where it's a massive building around which we had no say, but, you know, usually when it get public feedback and input, and to the extent that this kind of link between community and the tourism industry is kind of lauded, you know, it's developed, that I think that having community feedback on what's being about the retail sales, I don't know what that means. It could be a good thing, it might not, but, you know, possibly for the artisans, and reflecting back to what Mo's going to be presenting, you know, what about artisan pop-up shops where artists might have a half of but just if you're, you know, it's one to be in dialogue, you know, with groups, but there may be people that haven't even crossed your radar yet, and so some richness to keep that connection with the community could come out of it. So, sorry, sorry, Council, I have a lot of notes.
Thank you, Councillor Burt.
Certainly, we
Yeah.
get a lot of feedback and work with a lot of different groups, including the artisans, so that's been, you know, in the plans, most definitely.
Great,
Thank you, thank you. Councillor Anderson?
Well, a lot's been covered there. I was interested in service and, well, start with that one.
And what do you?
I'm just wondering, like, supporting the shuttle service is part of your plan. Do you foresee any increase to being able to fund them? It's sort of about the same levels that's been happening in the past.
So we have been, we've been promoting the schedule, and we promote the shuttle heavily through everything that we do, whether it be through the visitor center, our website. So we are fairly vigorous in our promotion of it currently. So we wouldn't stop that. Of course, we would.
I don't mean the promotional part, I mean the support.
Support.
You buy
funding.
advertising on the bus and so on. And do you see any increase?
For the shuttle service. We don't have any specific plans yet, but we've been tossing around some ideas about how we could do that.
Okay. And I'm glad to see that you have the welcome guide and you're educating people who come here of expectations and bylaws and so on.
And we do have to work as a community, as a tourism community around that.
Yeah.
So our members, are the people that are on the front lines outside of our visitor center for distribution of that information. So it's really working with the members to
I'll leave
Thank
it
you.
there for now.
Councillor Fick?
Thank you. I'm sure you didn't expect me to. I have a question, so. I was reminiscing, I just finished a master's program in tourism management, and I felt that it was a contribution that I could make to this town. And although I'm very glad for your presentation this morning, I am at the outset that there's a fair bit of disappointment for me as well in this tactical plan. And the reason that we're discussing this today, just to remind council and those in the audience who are aspiring to be on this council, that the service provider, that is Tourism Tofino, should have, and in another place it says must have, support from the local community and the tourism stakeholders, of which I feel every resident in this town is a part. So when Tourism Tofino, I take that very seriously, and I think that we need your support, and you need our support. This is a two-way street, and if we're going to go forward in unison, in collaboration, I think we have to do a lot more work together to get to that point where we really feel we're still having hard conversations, and this is a good thing. But I really struggle with the mission, the vision statement. If you could just maybe flip that back up there. And this is, that is my home. That is my community. I'm not just a destination. I'm a town. I'm a town of people who care deeply about this place. And in one part you said, cherish this place. We cherish this place. That's why we have this amazing staff. I guess when I see that word, we'll be recognized as North America's premier year-round destination. I recoil. I'm going to say the hard thing. I recoil. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, that we will be a great community, and then we will be a good place to visit. So when I see this word Tofino as a year-round destination, I think of Whistler. Sorry, Bob. Whistler started as a destination, and I know it's not, something universal. It might be something like promote Tofino as a year-round destination, and the word I don't like, but of learning and rich outdoor experiences. 7 years ago we talked about educational tourism, and that was one of the things that I stood on. So I just feel that there's nothing that's changed. One of 620 in the world. It demands our interest, our soul, our learning. People can't just come here anymore and be voyeurs. They need to be engaged. They need to be learning. The work in the early 1990s that has put us on this path. We wouldn't be here without people like you. So I guess I'm just having a hard time because I realize that we need each other. It says in the agreement, say we have to have a resolution to pass this tactical plan. It doesn't say that you need our signature, but we want to. We want to support you. We want to live life with you and engage with you. But these words do matter, and these words on a page are bothering me. The other thing, as was brought up by Councillor Anderson, this brochure that was put out is a very, very good first step. And at the end of that, it says that Tofino is located in the Taloquit Tribal Park. As an example, I see no mention of that. But this was just this year. So where is that in our tactical plan? That's a question I have, because you say, or the tactical plan says, that we will sit on the board of the UNESCO Biosphere, and they're very interested in being a part. But I'm not sure we've given them a space at the table in the fullest sense. And working with the biosphere would be, I think, a great advantage for, that's amazing. It's an amazing representation of the First Nations people. And that is an avenue that I would just highly recommend that the board embrace and work with. So I guess I was unable to get to the last Tourism Tofino board meeting because the time was changed and it didn't fit the day before with my schedule. I passed on my remarks via Dorothy Bart, who is the representative at the meeting, and I didn't hear anything back. So I'm just reconsider this vision. I don't feel, as you say on the end of the marketing plan, where I think Councillor McMaster said, we're going to generate demand aligned with community capacity and resident values. How does that statement fit with this vision is my question. It's just getting busier and busier. They don't have enough people. I watched my husband work this weekend, 48 hours straight. He was run off his feet at the hospital. I mean, we have to look at these issues. And our stakeholders are not just the people who are providing accommodation. Our stakeholders are the RCMP. They are the hospital. And become what you're suggesting we become with the capacity that we have at the time, or even looking forward. It's not something that I dream of doing. So I guess I'd just like to finish there and say I would like to see that vision statement be revisited and to our attention. And I just look forward to that conversation continuing whether I'm in this or when I'm not in this role. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peck.
Sure, certainly in terms of involvement of CBT and other organized out for any reason, they're into the tactical actual execution in the project plan is really connecting with a lot of the organizations that exist here, because everybody exists in this community. Everybody has slightly different roles and responsibilities, but they all mesh together. So with respect to the vision statement, whenever we read premier year-round destination, that means premier for us. It doesn't mean that we're trying to be Barcelona or we're trying to be a big fancy urban sort of destination. It means that whenever people come here for the reasons that they come here, they have a fabulous experience that is valued. It isn't about size, scope of destination. It's about what's in the destination and the experiences that people leave with and the sentiments that people leave with. So just in terms of clarifying that, it doesn't mean that we're looking at what is the destination. So that's it. Just want to put a little bit of context around that wording.
Thank you.
If that helps.
Councillor Blanchette?
Yeah, might as well chime in. Tourism Tofino is losing support with members of this community. I've been hearing talk during this election campaign of actually defunding Tourism Tofino and just going back to the old way of everybody does their old marketing. And I think that's in part because you've been too effective. You're very effective. It's, July and August, a lot of people find intolerable. And a lot of people are going to hear that as saying, oh, we want to make May, June, and September, October intolerable as well. That's a place to live. Your board has been persistent in claiming that it cannot do anything about the impacts of the tourism that you're so effectively bringing in. And I looked at when you lost your office space, ironically because the owners were turning it into staff accommodation, you managed to work pretty quickly with DBO to change their rules a little bit or adapt their rules to allow you to build more office space in where the visitor, some leeway, some flexibility that you're not exploiting in order to support, say, the shuttle to the tune of more than, I think, $5,000 a year is the amount that's been coming forward. So I would really urge your board to start looking closely. Parking is a perennial problem. that you might be able to do something about, partly in your marketing as well. And I think, I hope with the visitor etiquette that that's going along, and we'll proceed. But the last time you were for the Visitor Information Center, including office space and a Chester van display shed, I guess. The topic came up then of including housing, staff housing on the property, which was summarily dismissed. Land might not be entirely appropriate for staff housing, but was also the possibility of creating off-site staff housing. I don't know if, maybe I missed it in the 5-year strategic plan, but I couldn't find the word housing shortage. So I think that's another ball that your board has dropped by not including that. And I think from the talk I've been hearing, the coming council is going to be starting to play hardball. This term have been very accommodating. We've sort of put through what you want without too much pushback, a little bit of grumbling, but you've gotten what you wanted and needed without much in the way of pushback. But I think those days are going to be coming to how we can properly make some real contributions toward doing that. One quick particular question. In your income, your revenues, trained by DBO criteria for what you can spend it on, or if that might be freed up a little bit more flexibly to fund things like the shuttle or other kind of resident-facing or impact-addressing initiatives. Do you know that offhand?
That's a great question. It is not encumbered by any of the MRDT, and hence one of the reasons that we are trying to pursue some more avenues of funding.
Right. Well, hopefully we'll see some of those revenues dedicated toward some of the impacts that you've been hearing around the state for a few years now. Thank you for a very good presentation, very clear and right on time. And also thank you for being just an exemplary destination marketing organization. You do what you do very well, and I think your ancillary issues that come from you being so good at what you do, then we're all going to be a lot further ahead.
Great, thanks very much. Thank you. So we're not going to, I'll just make a few closing comments and then I think we're going to move on. But I don't think this conversation could have happened 2 years ago. And the fact that you are here and that you have presented even a values-based positioning in the tactical plan, and that you have done some of the homework that is starting to be required to understand the community and its values and be more synergistic with the way that we're advertising this place and marketing this place. And indeed heartfelt comments today about some of the conflict and the difficulties that we see arising. But I also want to point out that what's happening here is a conversation amongst ourselves that clearly needs to happen more, and there were a lot of comments made to that effect. It's a dialogue, and I do want to say that I still don't think that it's fair to put Tourism Tofino in the crosshairs and say that this is happening in isolation because of what Tourism Tofino is doing. And I wholly agree with Councillor Blanchette that Tourism Tofino has done a terrific job about what its mandate is to do. And that now we have to build our understanding of each other as a community, and we're the community making the invitation to us. And there are very, very, very few people whose lives are not touched in good ways and maybe in not such good ways by tourism. So let's continue this the way it's happened so respectfully and in this kind of dialogue, and it'll be in this room and it'll be outside of this room, and we're all here to make this community a better place to live in and to raise our families.
And do we have just a couple of minutes for JJ to make a statement?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
I would just like to thank, as this is probably our last presentation to this mayor and council, all of you for your dedication and support of Tourism Tofino. And without your support and ongoing, critiques and helping us point the ship in the right direction, we couldn't have accomplished what we did in the last 3.5 years, and we have done a lot, and we have put ourselves at the forefront, as the mayor said, and as Councillor Blanchette said, as a tourism destination. And there is a microscope from other DMOs in the province as to what Tourism Tofino does, as well as how we spend our money. A reminder that, you know, we are in full agreement with Councillor Barth that we want to create this destination management organization, that we can collab committee, but as the board of directors, I mean, we live here, we work here, we understand the needs and the wants and the challenges and the opportunities. And so as a board, we want to develop that and we want to grow that as well. To Councillor Blanchette's comment about the surplus MRDT from the online travel accommodators, Airbnb, et cetera, is going to be used for housing. That amount, as in discussions with Councillor Bart, we estimate between $750 and $1 million over the next 5 years. So there is a lot of money coming to the community. That can be decided. As well as at the end of our term in 2022, with the existing plan, is that we as a board had already agreed in the beginning to go back to 2% destination marketing fee. However, we're currently collecting 3%, and that extra determined between the Tourism Tofino Board, Mayor and Council, and the community as to what it gets done with after 2022. So there's a large dollar available at that point once the visitor center is paid off. And also to remind that the visitor center is for the community because it will become part of the District of Tofino's asset from the moment the key gets put in the door. So that is something that when visitor services is virtual reality, that building will become an asset of the district and can be used in any way, shape, or form that we see fit. So very excited about that. Very excited again about having worked with you in the last 3.5 years. I just wanted to personally say thank you again for your support. And that's it.
Thank you, Jason. That's wonderful. Okay.
I had a question of staff, if I may. To about council reporting back on the formation of some sort of tourism management body. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on then. So we have 2 items of correspondence today on our agenda, and the first is from the Community Benefits Coalition of BC with some information about the Community Benefits Coalition of BC and the steps that the BC government is taking to undertake. Any questions? Councillor Blanchette?
But first, it looked to me like possibly an industry lobby group, but looking into it on their website and such, it looks, I mean, it was started up by labor, and it looks totally legit. I would be happy to have stuff, especially given the huge infrastructure that we have coming to us with the liquid waste plant.
So my understanding is that this isn't something that municipalities can join. It's not like an organization so much. It's provincially led procurement and their direction that they're taking. But it's certainly, as he asks for, something that a municipality can join. Everybody is in agreement that this has been done exactly the right way. But
Well, I mean,
so
on the website they talk about various communities that have, or various projects in various communities that have used this process. How do we make sure that our project...
This is the province's initiative, and we are making the exploration around our own strategic or social procurement opportunities here. And we've had a report from staff in the past about undertaking a new framework for purchasing and procurement to that, and something that staff could definitely look at. Yeah.
Do we need a motion to refer to staff?
I'm sure we could just refer the letter to staff, yeah. Councillor Bart, did you have a?
No, that you just basically said.
I mean, if you want to make that motion, that would be fine.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for other comments if there are any.
I'm perfect, but anyone else?
Inclusion and future considerations of social procurement.
Anybody else comment? Is that your motion then, Councillor Anderson?
I'll second it.
Considerations in social or strategic procurement.
Yeah,
All
but
right.
no report required.
No, thank you. Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you, motion carried. Right, the second letter is from local resident Petra Hansman, and this is about some observations around the beach and the different debris and trash from the beach, and she is asking whether it is possible to encourage or even require that beachfront businesses send out staff in the mornings and evenings to clean up waste left by some of our less environmentally considerate visitors. Questions, comments? Councilor Anderson?
Our beach resorts are doing this already, and I have trouble with maybe requiring them, mainly because I don't know how we require them to do that. Don't know the mechanism that municipality has available to them. But I think it could go a long way as just sort of looking at it as a community spirited thing to do, but how to encourage it, I don't know exactly.
Thanks. Councilor Park?
Yeah, thanks. I don't know if it's appropriate or not. I asked and it was like, oh my God, because that is exactly what needs to be done. So I think it's kind of beyond just the beaches. It's everywhere, and where you have that interface, and that we would do that, and it kind of drew this to my attention in that particular way, and so then getting Petra's letter sort of underscored it, to perhaps be passed through to Tourism Tofino. There's that category of destination management that is talked about, where this is exactly the kind of invitation for participating, for kind of supporting a culture of care, to engage with resorts community, let that kind of pride of place. There's just a whole bunch of ways that we could achieve that, and I'm not quite sure where this ultimately wants to land, but I like the messaging very much. Yeah.
Thanks. Councilor Blanchett?
Letters we've had fairly recently about beach fires, that a lot of the beach fire problem in the burning big driftwood is the individual vacation rentals strung along Chesterman Beach. And I'm referring this to the Chamber of Commerce, who they would be a member of, a lot of those would be a member of, and to encourage it as a voluntary, as Councillor Bard said, stupid.
Thank you. Councilor Anderson?
I've talked to some downtown business go out and clean the street in front of their places. Others see it as the responsibility of local government to do that, and they feel it should be funded through their taxes. So there's mixed ideas about in the world where you have to clear the snow or ice on your sidewalk in front of your place. There's different levels of maintenance that governments either require or people want. So to what extent do you want to pay taxes to have this done? To what extent can people take care of stuff themselves and not have to have their taxes increased to have done for them? I think that's part of sort of a love your town campaign or something. And to see where people are at with that. Certainly the work that some organizations like Surfrider have done to recognize that these are good things to do. You actually feel good doing it. I went and picked up cigarette butts not long ago. It doesn't feel good while you're doing it, but afterwards you do feel good that it's over and good that you did that. But also there's a real learning experience as well, that you get to read into what. So there's something to be done here, but I don't know what to start today. But anyways.
Thank you. Anyone else who hasn't spoken? Councilor Thick?
Yeah, just to say, I think that when it says, enjoy your time and remember to leave things as they naturally are so they may continue to flourish, Emerson said that. But I had the same thought as Councillor Blanchett, which was, why don't we pass this letter along to the Chamber of Commerce and Tourism Tofino and just ask how they would, how would they like to help in this matter? Because I think we do our part. I mean, our taxes pay for, what I've heard, 3 days a week of tourism garbage, each one of us, when we see those things, pick them up. But I'm just saying, I agree with the letter writer. I think it's a really good idea. I think brochures like this help. I think that writing to the chamber and just letting them know that, things are starting to be noticeably in working, do what we can. So I think the only thing I have is to send it along as well to the chamber and to thank the letter writer for just their concern.
Well, isn't it ironic that the letter writer is on the board of directors of the chamber? So it would be great if they get it back. But I just want to lend my support to them. Out to Tourism Tofino, to the Chamber of Commerce. We have organizations like Surfrider that are trying to do this through their I can't remember the name of the campaign, that's terrible. The business campaign they have, the Green Business Campaign. And so to create that kind of campaign of let's invite them to work all together. Somebody want to make a motion?
I'd like to refer the letter to the Chamber of Commerce and Tourism Tofino with an invitation to consider ways that this could be implemented.
Okay, so the motion then, to refer the letter or to forward, consider how
this could be implemented.
how we could encourage a voluntary campaign. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And throughout the whole community, or, and beaches and downtown, or something to that. Sorry, this making up more.
A seconder? Yeah, all right, moved and seconded. Elise, you're good? Okay, thank you. All right, all in favor? Thank you, that's everyone, motion carried. Thanks, Petra. There she is. Mo is here to present with staff on the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Act.
Seating, I think, still available for...
Yeah, Norma, if you need a seat, there's a few chairs now. There's a chair up front. Yeah, front row seat, front row seat. Yay.
Close enough to throw something, Norma. Ready to talk about this. You have had a chance to review the new Tofino Arts, Culture, and Heritage Action Plan. This was brought forward somewhat on the heels of the event strategy that we developed, which was a 5-year plan to build capacity across the event community, provide training for event professionals, align the events in the community with provide tools that visitors can also engage in events. With the success of that, and we're still in that process, we have about another year and a half in that, staff determined it really made sense to try and do the same with Arts, Culture, Heritage. You'll hear me refer to ACH, which is just an abbreviation of Arts, Culture, Heritage as we go through this. So this built on 3 other plans that have happened, the Heritage Master Plan from 2013 and the Tofino Cultural Scan from 2012. These have had some measure of success, particularly the Heritage Master Plan, largely due to concentrated volunteer efforts and some funding actually from the District of Tofino Council to help them achieve some of the objectives there. But what we also took the sum of the parts, it really takes collaborative action. To have small individual groups trying to push programs forward can be very challenging, and this is a town where volunteers are often oversubscribed as well. So getting all those resources together, and in doing so, what we did was we brought together the ACH community in June for what we called a discovery workshop. What's working, what isn't, took a look at some of the past plans, what's come to life from those, and what is still sitting there. The draft plan in September to the ACH community with really great positive agreement on where we've gone. So the factors we determined were required to succeed in moving forward in the ACH strategy was centralized collaborative leadership. You need somebody to drive the arts and culture community. There's also centralized collaborative leadership along with arts, culture, heritage collaboration. Everybody needs to be involved. Multi-year support from the District of Tofino, support from Tourism Tofino, great to see that that's there from Nancy this morning. And together build, what it wasn't about, I think it's important to be clear too, was creating specific plans for every possible arts, culture, heritage discipline. So the folks who run the museum will still largely run, it was split into 4 primary deliverables, and that was capacity building, which included building some governance for this whole ACH working group, and professional development for the arts organizations. So the folks, whether they're volunteering or paid professionals, what are those skills that the arts, culture, heritage professionals and working people in the community need to make them stronger, which the capacity building in the event plan was extremely successful in helping people, which includes building a number of required action plans that need to drill deeper than what this plan specifically covers, specifically venues and assessing what venues, both sort of traditional and non-traditional, might be available for both performance, for retail sales. You heard it being spoken about with the new information center. That's a great place for artisan and artist sales to take place that are authentically Tofino. Additionally, a strategy on funding. Right now, there's also Growth in Arts, Culture, Heritage Foundation funding, and there's great opportunities for Tofino to increase the amount of external funding coming from other layers of government and other places throughout the province and federally into Tofino directly, along with governance as well. So how does the whole thing work? How do we make this work together with a number of different retail space, working artist space? It's a challenge in terms of affordability and housing for anyone here in this community. It's particularly tough on artists to make a living from their arts, and where affordability is a challenge. But also developing professional development artist tools specifically for the artists and artisans in the community, so more about the artistic side, and creating more programs, experiences, and events for the community to engage broadly in arts, culture, heritage. Communication tools out there, very similar to what we did with the event strategy, where there's monthly updates on what you can participate in across the entire spectrum, providing collective support to the individual groups that are trying to market into the community and make sure everybody knows what's going on, along with greater community engagements to the visitors. And why is this so important right now? It goes beyond, and you know, all of us who work in the tourism industry are dealing with the challenges of over-tourism, and we heard your concerns clearly this morning. But this goes well beyond being a tourism initiative. It's one of those things where it becomes an ancillary benefit. But arts, culture, heritage it's the voice, it's the unique positioning of who we are, it's how we demonstrate who we are to ourselves and to people who visit. It also allows us to diversify local experiences as well as visitor experiences in Tofino, and it's one of the things that is climate proof, although I always give you credit for making rain a sellable product, so that's not true for everyone in tourism. It's also important to know that arts, culture, heritage truly are an economic driver. While they do need subsidy, that is the reality of arts, culture, heritage. Some quick statistics from the BC Alliance for Arts and Culture. In 2016, the cultural activities in BC contributed 7.2 regional sport, which people find astonishing, and that's where it ends up being a bit of a hidden sector. The cultural sector also pays 5 times more in taxes than it receives in funding. So it has an incredible return on investment. And beyond just that, every dollar spent in arts, culture, heritage by an individual generally results in a $3.2 worth of that. You extend what you spent just on the cultural experience itself. When we were kids, we called it going outside to play. We also now are seeing this need has emerged for this term called creative literacy. We do not have the level of creative thinking amongst our youth, our kids, and even the millennials that we grew up with. When arts programs, music programs that develop important parts of our brain are minimizing and reducing their ability for creative problem solving, for resilient thinking, for innovation, for all the tools we're going to need to make sure we're successful through this century. And so it's so important that becomes part of the heart and soul of any community. So this takes us through 3 years of various strategies to elevate arts, culture, and heritage here in the community. I'll just read you the vision. Service a strategic roadmap for the ACH sector, District of Tofino, Tourism Tofino, and community stakeholders. The ACH Action Plan will celebrate and promote Tofino's cultural assets, including arts, culture, heritage, educational, and First Nations offerings by fostering a vibrant, sustainable, authentic, fun, and participation, and increased economic opportunities in arts, culture, and heritage sectors. With that, I want to thank you for the reliable, continued funding that's been given to the event strategy. that kind of consistent funding that will also be required in the Arts, Culture, Heritage Action Plan is an absolute game changer for people in the cultural and events fields. When you go from your security of 2 to 3 years worth of funding makes a big difference to how far ahead you can think, how much you know you can achieve within that time. So I want to thank you for what you've done for events and in giving the opportunity to create this plan and then move forward in the next term and action it. And all I have to say about the plan, and I'm not sure if April has any other comments, but we'd be happy to take questions.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Mel. Okay. Who wants to start?
All right.
Councilor Bishop?
Looks great, let's go.
Okay.
Just a question about, we have a problematic audience in Tofino who may or may not show up and never buy advance tickets. Is there like an audience development component?
And it shows up in the form of relationships. It also shows up in the form of ticket sales.
Yeah.
And I work directly in arts and culture, and I have staff that freak out 24 hours before every show we do. So it is a combination of strategies that we'll share. That's the capacity building element, things like working with the arts, culture, heritage sector with ticketed events on strategies on advanced ticketing, discounting, ways to get people to commit sooner, business of faith, because people show up at the last minute. People make decisions on weather, and sometimes it's making sure a friend tells a friend and bringing people along, but you kind of have to have nerves of steel in this business to some degree, because that is the way of it pretty much everywhere. But there is audience development, building some of those strategies to get people to commit sooner.
Thank you. Councilor Bart?
Thank you. Thank you, Mo. That's, just before I do, though, I want to say that it took considerable effort, actually, to get a small budget, I think it was $30,000, to do those two plans, the Heritage Master Plan and the Arts and Culture Master Plan. And as I've said, repeated budget meetings, waiting for that entry point where we can kind of elevate this area of arts and culture because of the reasons that you've talked about, not only what's in the community, but also how by activating that energy and so forth, it just has these amazing results that are both economic as well as quality. Did get a kind of bit of a reboot, and April in her services in her department now is turning her eyes on these areas, and it's fantastic. So having said that, I'd like to move the recommendation that the Tofino Arts, Culture and Heritage Action Plan, Tofino Arts, Culture and Heritage, be endorsed.
Enthusiastically seconded.
Okay, and we'll continue with any questions from those who have not yet spoken. Any questions from?
I don't have any questions, but I think it's a great plan. It's ambitious. I think the toughest thing, and I think so much of the RMI money in Tofino has gone to just infrastructure, expansion of sidewalks and so on. And I think as we move forward, we're going to see more of these kinds of possibilities for RMI money, and the community is going to start seeing other social and tangible benefits. And so I'm really glad to see that this can be funded from that and that we can move on. Some great and ambitious goals in this.
So for my time on council, I think this is one of the best plans I've ever seen. I think it should be, other organisations should learn from this. I'm glad you stressed it's a roadmap, because I think with Tofino, the challenges we've got ahead of us is good.
Councilor Dick, anything?
Yeah, I just, Councilor Bart for persevering, and the rest of the arts and cultural community for continuing to bring this forward, and Mo for your hard work and just getting it to the printed word. I really appreciate it. And while we're on the subject of vision and missions, I just have to say it was music to my ears to read what this community has written. When I read it, it's like, okay, just stop at the first sentence. Like, that is a fantastic vision. The vision is the dream, where it is, and the mission to me is how and when and how we're going to get to it, the everyday bits and pieces of it. So I just want to say, fantastic. I think it is great. as we go forward in the next 4 to 10 years for that money. You know, whether it's parking or whether it's sewer treatment and all these other infrastructure needs. As you said, this is the voice of our community, and I just love that you put it into the written word for us all to embrace and see. So
Thank you very much, and I just want to add two things. One, the arts is often up against sewage treatment. I understand. It's hard to sometimes make those choices. But to Councillor McMaster's point, there will be bumps in the road, and one of the things that both these plans have been able to do in the way they're written is to course correct and shift. And for example, the event plan was originally written as an event tourism plan. Instead, it became developing better event quality, more success for the producers, ensuring financial stability, so we can be responsive to that. And secondly, I will continue working with our ACH community. One of the things we can all do better as arts professionals, and I laid a couple of statistics out, is tell a more dynamic economic and fiscal story as well. The critically important intangibles we reach with these, but there's also tangibles, and that'll be something that in future councils we hope we can be bringing forward, both what the return on investment has brought you through funds and grants and what it's actually meant to the well-being of the community and beyond. So thank you very much for your points. It's all things that we're aware of and look forward to delivering with it.
An implementation contract, and what's the source?
Yeah, so currently we have a partnership with Tourism Tofino to co-fund the implementation of the event strategy, and we're looking to shift those resources over to this plan.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question is, under direct ACH support and our granting program that we currently have $25,000 allocated, it says $25,000. So did you have discussions as part of this about the way those monies are given out and maybe decoupling it from a political process, or?
Yes, Your Worship. So, you know, as we start the plan, we want to work through those kind of recommendations, and they were touched upon, and there are other models in other communities where a very well counsel with rationale. So you've got the community living, breathing this, who are all going to benefit from those decisions every year, ideally, are making the recommendations back to the the elected officials. So that's very informal. We haven't got, that's part of the governance mapping that we'll do, but that has been one of the suggestions.
Councillor, thank you. This is fantastic. I really want to offer my congratulations to everybody that's been involved in this.
And thanks to the ACH sector
Yeah,
that came out in full strength to discuss this and shared all kinds of feedback over the phone as well.
You couldn't have done it without that. That's
Absolutely.
Right. And what really resonates with me is when you said when you go from year to year, you can only plan for year to year. So that really hits home. Okay, any final comments, or I'll call the question then on the motion.
Thank you.
Okay, moving into something entirely different. All right, the next item on our agenda is the permissive taxation exemption report, and we have had a discussion about this already, but here it is before us. Natalie, do you have any?
Yeah, just one meeting. Council recalls staff was to bring forward a policy amendment to add a category, and so we've done that, and I just wanted to go through the wording with council. It's a little bit different than what the resolution was. But I felt it was clear enough that it wouldn't be missing to apply for an exemption under this category. The organization must carry out visitor information services and be under agreement with the District of Tofino to receive the municipal and regional district tax.
Thank you. That's great.
So the first recommendation is with respect to the policy amendment, and the second one introduces the permissive tax exemption bylaw.
Great. Any questions?
I'll move the first recommendation.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded that the District of Tofino permissive tax exemption policy be amended by adding the following evaluation category, visitor information services. To apply for an exemption under this category, the organization must carry out visitor information services and be amended. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. None opposed. Motion carried.
I'll move the second recommendation that the District of Tofino 2017 to 2018 be introduced and read the first, second and third time.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. None opposed. Motion carried. All right. The next is the council remuneration bylaw. and the report in the package and the proposed bylaw coming forward based on our discussion that we had at the last meeting. Councillor Blanchette.
I think it all looks fair, and I'll move the recommendation.
Second.
Thank you then. It is moved then that the District of Tofino Council Remuneration Bylaw number 1254, 2018 be introduced and read a first, second, and third time. Any questions? All right, all in favor? Thank you. None opposed? From Community Sustainability, do you have a presentation or?
I do briefly.
Okay, sure, that's great. Thanks, Aaron.
Quicker?
It's underneath the
Yes. Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm in front of you this morning to look for support for towards a grant application. BCM this fall, a grant opportunity came forward from the federal and provincial governments for where we're at and Temple Baskin. So again, just to sort of refresh your memories, at this point we're looking at developing a indoor recreation facility, which is basically a high school gym with washrooms, some sort of activity or cultural room, gym storage, recreation storage, bleachers, small recreation office. This concept was brought forward in our 2017-2018 site planning process, and which resulted in a site plan. Where's the site plan? We'll get to the site plan. So the timeline, this project has been in the 5-year financial plan for about 3 years, I believe, 3 or 4 years. It's also in our 2015 recreation management plan, strategic plan in 2016. We did a 2017 community hall addition, which was sort of off to the side. And in 2017-2018, once the community hall addition was finished, we completed a site planning process for the proposed building. If we decide to move forward with applying for this grant, we'd be looking at late 2018-2019 preliminary plan costing, a grant 21 build. At this point, I just want to confirm, just to remind council that this is something that is in our plan, for a 2021 build, and in the end, the monies that we're looking for to support our grant application are actually in the 2019 year in the financial plan. So if we...
Sorry, could you repeat that?
We'd be looking at using the funds that are already allocated in the 2019 budget in 2018. So because we have a grant deadline of January 23rd, so we're basically moving it up 3 months. So the site plan identified 2 options involved wholesale clearing of the site. In conversations and after an unsuccessful RFP process, we've jumped over to concept A as it requires less blasting, and we couldn't afford concept B at this point. It would include a gym, lobby, cultural space, fitness room, small office, and bleachers. The proposed gym facility would be here, so this would be the gym would be. This would be sort of washrooms and office space. And here would be fitness rooms and cultural space area in the lobby. This is sort of left aside for a future 3rd building if we so chose, which is why the washrooms are and changing to located along this side, so that if we did decide to. So we did some cost estimates in 2015 for the feasibility study. Those are most likely out of date. At that time, they were costing between $1.5 and $4.1 million. We expect those costs to be significantly higher in 2021 based on the current trends. So at this point, or in the 5-year financial plan, we've been estimating about for $3.7 million of that $5 million if we were successful in our application. Again, it's included in our financial plan at $5 million. Currently, in black is how we propose to pay for the facility. It was going to be debt proceeds of $2.5 million. $1 million of debt proceeds that we'd be borrowing, and we'd actually be receiving about $3.7 million in granting funds. So if we were successful, we'd be in better shape for the financial plan than we are currently based on our plan. So just a rough estimate of the cost of boring. So if we were successful, $1.3 million that we borrowed to develop this facility at 3% over a 20-year term is not here. If we were to borrow this, the $2.5 million as we currently have in the financial plan, we were looking at about $144,000 at 3% over 25 years. So just to sort of illustrate that if this is an opportunity, that if we were successful, our borrowing costs would be significantly lower, perhaps as much as half of what they would be if we were to fund this in the current way that we have in the action plan. So again, next steps, the project's in our five-year plan and council strategic plan. We're looking for council support to begin detailed design drawings and grant application. Again, that would put us about 3 months earlier than our initial start date, which was meant to be in January 2019. A grant writer who we've used in the past to help us, Ellen Hughes, who helped us get the grant for Community Hall Edition. That's about a $5,000 bill. We're looking at working with Herald Engineering for detailed design drawings for application. That's probably going to be in a $20,000 to $50,000 range. And we're also looking at potentially working with Inform Planning to develop a business case, which is also required for the grant application. We currently have $75,000 in amenity funds in the only funds we have allocated is $22,000 from 2019. So I'd probably be looking at adding, depending on what all those costs come down at, make an amendment to the 2019 budget to include those costs. And that's what I have.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
With the change in the RMI program and the fact that it will allow us to consider emergency planning and the fact that a gymnasium, is that a possible source of funds?
There is some stacking rules in this grant, which may make it difficult to do such a thing. So when there's other group funding coming from provincial or federal governments, there's stacking rules applied. I haven't looked. I've actually spoken to Keith about any funds that he may have access to, but I haven't looked into the detail. But there are definitely some restrictions on that.
Okay. Thanks. Councillor Barr?
Yeah, thank you. This is great to have a chance to talk about this. And so I'm taking it that you're opting for the plan that eliminates the skate park. Is that correct?
It would be the plan that would require us to move the bike park.
I mean bike park.
Cost jet. I guess we'll do that. I need to get some. We're jumped ahead a bunch of times, so it was always our intent to get these detailed cost estimates now or in January. I'm just having to move that forward, so that is something that will be factored into the costs. I don't know what they factor on they are right now.
Is this the best location, really, for this? I mean, I just have to ask, because it sounds like option B, too expensive, too much rock removal, and option A, there's other things I don't want to get to about this plan, but, I remember there's the Demery Park, and we never did that outdoor facility, and maybe that's not the right place, but I'm just kind of trying to wrestle a bit with.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult question for me to answer whether it's the best place. It's the place that we've chosen as a council and as a community over the last 3 years. We did a feasibility study that looked at the school as a location. We looked at industrial way as a location. We looked at that area as a location. Demery, unfortunately, is too small. We want to be able to accommodate parking. So through our processes, there's other opportunities there for interaction with communities, such as the existing community hall and the bike trails and the access to the school. So again, as one part is, I think that the work that we've done over the last few years kind of points us to this area. And speaking with Mr. Gibson from Gibson Contracting, the cost again, I think I've explained to council of fill is trucking costs. The fill is all open stuffing. So the idea would be to, I'm guessing, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here, but would be to move whatever rock we needed to move from that area, not the volume that we expected, and dump it on. The cost of clearing may not be that as expensive as we think it is.
Okay, so the rationale for not keeping the bike park, or not using option B?
So in concept A, one of the expectations that deputy parking is important. We think it's important. Again, I think the bike park as is a great concept. It's not a most used area. I think it's something that I would like to see continue, but maybe it's just not the allocation, and maybe that's part of this project as well. So.
Okay. So one of the things that I understand, and maybe you can correct me if I'm mistaken, but it's in my notes here, that for this particular grant, in a community of under 25,000, you could apply for up to 90%, but in a community under 5,000, you could apply for 100% funding on a project up to $9 million.
That's a different, not, it's just the 73.33 cent dollars. That's a different set of,
Okay, I thought it was the same because they were both announced by the...
they were announced at the same time, so it's a little
time.
confusing.
Okay, and is there a reason why we wouldn't, I mean, there's another thing
This wouldn't
that...
qualify under the other program.
Okay, oh yeah, okay, all right. So the other thing that I have wondered about, you just talked about the stacking, but one of the things there is money for up to $1 million is for childcare space. And, you know, if we're creating this sort of hub for activity and community space, whether or not it's appropriate in some way to
So I think
look at that.
I think the federal government's way ahead of us, but they said in this grant stream, no childcare space, no housing.
Okay, so that's eliminated, all right. And then the last thing, we've just heard the arts and culture are actually hearing from the arts and culture community as to what their needs are that could kind of fit and be adapted. One of the things that's always been the challenge around the community hall is there was a lot of opportunity for input, and then whatever happened, it was completely ignored. And so we didn't get the hall that we wanted or needed at the time, and I just don't want to see that happen in any way. And I think the approaches you've taken have been really reassuring on that front, but the space for arts kind of maybe just a kind of...
Reading the grant application a couple times now, one of the pieces that seem to maybe would help our application is they actually call it a cultural space, and again, something that we may work with our neighboring First Nations, the Tulukwit, to deal with. But the nice thing about this is, if we decide to move forward today and we apply for the grant, and if we get the grant, we have 2 years. It's kind of funny that we have 2 years to actually build, and I think that would be a really great time to start having fuller conversations about that. So I take your point.
As long as we're not locked into a plan that really could be adapted to.
No, it's kind of a design that will give us a fulsome application without putting too much detail into it, because we have an idea, we have some concepts, but we don't get into that box yet. But the province wants us to get into the box, so it's
Fantastic. Okay, thank you. Not from me.
Great, thank you. Councillor Anderson?
Some of the questions I had have already been asked, but I'm just wondering if you could expand a little bit on interest in this facility and maybe any ways of partnering. I'm sure that they'd be interested in sharing in the use of it, so I'm just wondering if they're interested in sharing financing and the planning of it, if there's a route there that we can take. And for that, I'm just really glad that staff could move on this so quickly, so shortly after the announcement, and it sort of speaks to the amount of planning that's already gone into it, that we were kind of ready to even participate in this because they don't have the readiness there. So anyways, about TFN possible participation.
Definitely. In reading the grant application, support of or working with your neighboring First Nations is very important. It references the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's work and ways to work with First Nations. So that'll be we're already starting those phone calls already. We believe we have general support for this building in speaking with would be in partnership with Tulukwit. I don't know what that means yet. I don't know if there's money coming to the table yet. It would be something that would be, I see as a facility for the region, Long Beach this way, for our communities, considering that, again, all the children go to school in the same area, we all use the same hospital, we all work downtown or in the area. So it's going to be a big part of our application. I can't give you the details yet, other than that we've definitely flagged that as a main point for us.
That's great. Councillor Reitmaster and then Councillor.
Yeah, I'll be supporting this recommendation. However, my concerns, and you and I have discussed this a little bit, is I think this is, at the moment, this is a badly needed Band-Aid solution. You know, ideally, I think we need to be thinking about what we need in 25 years for the next generation, but we definitely need something now. My other concern is being involved in a lot of YMCAs and fitness centres around Alberta and BC, is they generally sit empty between 9 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, unless you have something to bring those retirees, seniors in. So that's one of the reasons I've been trying to stress to you that get so seniors can get, you know, they're not walking on the beach in the rain, they can go, then they'll sit and have coffee and things like that. So those are my concerns. You know. But I will support the grant application.
Thank you, Councillor Fick.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, I understand there's only 106 days, and I understand the urgency of this, and I was there when the announcement was made at UVCM, and very glad to hear that. I'm just wondering why there isn't another option being considered here in terms of a facility such as we've been speaking about the library. Is that something that could be ready for this application?
Two things. We're a lot more advanced with the planning of the recreation facility, the gym, than we are in the planning of the library. CBT Council, you know, considered something motion really for the first time 2 weeks ago with respect to the library and CBT. The other factor in staff making this recommendation is the recreation facility is very squarely within solely our mandate, where library, CBT is, you know, partners in the community that we're enthusiastic about working with, but that mandate is not squarely ours. So the gym facility as a priority this time, and then work with the other organizations to try to find other funding opportunities as that project advances in planning. It was certainly a discussion that we had.
And as you know, I've spent half my life in gyms and teaching gyms, so I'm not opposed to this idea. I have some questions though. I was there at the meetings in November, and I'm a bit troubled by the package. It reports the public engagement outcomes and then comes to the conclusion that only concept A or concept B are the most likely to proceed. Yet when I read the raw data on page 88 to 93, I did a word count. It might not come as a surprise to you, but it was 15 times. And I just want to go back to that meeting in November last year, which I took part in. And, you know, I know that when that idea is brought up, the first response is, we don't have enough money for that. But when you look at the number of studies and what is being said here today, 25 years ago, the answer is still the same. After the multi-use path, we need a pool. That was the word 25 years ago. It's still the word today. 15 times it's mentioned here. I think the gym's mentioned a couple of times. What a new recreational facility to our small community. When I used the recreation hall, and I spent a fair bit of time up there, there's nobody knocking on that door at the end of pickleball waiting to come in. I'm a bit troubled by this. I just wonder what we are going to do between 9 and 4. And I know, you know, and I hear the seniors, and there's a lot of young kids, so I do see there's a need, and maybe if we're going to go forward with this idea, I just wonder, where's there at the meeting? The architects were there at the meeting. And when I suggested the idea of how we might fund this small facility, they said, bingo, that's a fantastic idea. It's not even reported in the report. So I'm just saying that the report is a bit distressing to me when those concepts, I had no idea in the raw community input from December 15th, 2017 to whatever it is, that those 2 weeks, which is right before Christmas. I have no idea. Is that 100 people? Is that 20 people? Are there 2 people at the co-op? How many people are we talking about? We really need this. This is what we're saying to Tourism Tofino. We need numbers. Where are the numbers here? Friday, December 15th, what's the point of including this if we don't know how many people? Is this 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, 100 people, 10% of our population, 20%? It's frustrating to me. We have these raw data that's included in the report, yet when the conclusions come, we have no mention of the word pool. In the recommendation, we have the words indoor recreation facility. Yet, in all the data, all the report, we talk about gym. So if it's going to be a gym, let's say the word gym, G-Y-M. It's going to be a gym. All right, we all know what we're talking about. The community knows what we're talking about. This is a misnomer to me. Word as is being put forward. I'd just like to hear what the other councillors have to say. It's not what I hear people want. If it's what the rest of this council thinks is important and the only thing we can do in 106 days, I'm willing to support it.
Okay, thanks very much.
For indoor, covered indoor space in the winter when it rains. And we have this opportunity and some planning in place to move on it, and I think we should move on it. I don't think the fact that we're moving on this excludes all these other ideas of things that we want, such as a pool. But this is what we've been working towards. So if we had been working towards a pool and had that front and center and had that expressed by our community as front and center, and I think yes, pool does come up again and again in a strong way when we go out and ask what do you want in terms of facilities. But what has come to the forefront as being achievable within our lifetimes and needed before our kids are completely grown up is just indoor space. So here we are, and I think that's how I see we got here. I don't think pool idea is being ignored by moving on this.
Thank you. Councillor McMaster?
Well, I mentioned about whether there was room to do anything else in this community, and I've always felt that we needed something for kids to get out of the rain and seniors to get out in the rain. And yes, we do need a pool, but I think this is achievable while we still meet our infrastructure objectives. I think it's in the right price range, and maybe if we move ahead with this and it's achieved, maybe the thinking around the multiplex without a pool will change. Say that the multiplex might change.
I have a question, but maybe just does anybody have any other thing to say before I chime in? Yeah.
Thanks. So the other part of this is, let's remember the delegation that came and said we can do the whole gym for 1.5 million like they did in Port Alberni. So, this has really moved along to a different kind of discussion. But that 1.3 million, one of the things that I've really felt that we kind of lost an opportunity on is utilizing the Community Foundation program set up through the CBT, wherein we set up a interest in the form of sponsorship or legacy, or like we had a situation of a massive sale of an incredibly valuable property, and whether or not they would have taken advantage of that. But just in that moment, just realizing that we didn't even have a place that could be considered where you might go and leave a legacy fund and say, put the name on it, like putting the name on the bench, but make it that much more significant. So I think we should be absolutely putting our eyes to how into creating that fund. And because what we're not talking about here is the operating costs. And we know they are going to be there, and we also know that we now deal with asset management, so we're going to have asset management costs. And I think that's going to be enough of a burden for the community in supporting this. I think we need to be rigorous in finding that other money. So that's all.
It's a point well taken. I think as we get closer to like a product, it starts to become quite more owners within the community that may be willing to help us out when we get to that step. I would also remind council that we also have in our community contribution guidelines, we have the opportunity to put funds to, we are putting towards housing, and I understand that, but we created 2 streams for ourselves. We created a recreation facility stream and a housing stream, and so there's also that opportunity for us as well. Again, it's kind of tough to do that in the light of the housing issues that we face, but just to say that that is an opportunity as well.
Thanks.
When this skate park project went ahead, it did so with contributions on sponsors in the community, corporate sponsors, I guess is the right word for it. And I'm just wondering if that's pursued, if we go out and look for sponsorships, would that take away from grant funding, or that's not considered stacking? So
Yeah.
that's possible as well.
Yeah, I'd have to look into it, but I think that if there was, I should say that we're budgeting for $5 million, but there are different technologies out there, so I still get calls from Sprung, you know, and they are there as the $1.5 million facility, and it could be that we develop something or offer something that's less than $5 million. Again, I'm hoping it's not more. But this is kind of some detailed design drawings to start to tell us whether we're in that right ballpark or.
Thank you, and yeah, I support moving ahead with this, and I just want to remind everybody that if in the end we do go through the borrowing bylaw, then the community has that opportunity to communicate. I just wanted to pick up on one thing that Councillor Bart said, because that was exactly what I was thinking about, was around the operating costs and the design of the building, and just being mindful of our long-term commitments to support the building and build it in a way that is operationally feasible for us, and especially when it comes to climate change and other, sometimes the upfront capital costs are worth the long-term operational savings. And when it comes to heating this building, and I'm sure you're already thinking about it.
For sure, and I think in the grant reserve as well, one of the requirements is to develop it 25% better than such standards. So that's written as baked into the grant itself, which is great, which is stuff we should be doing anyways. And, I think ideas of having a small office up there for recreation staff to work out of, again, helps us with not having to have someone, being able to keep an eye on our facilities and to maintain them.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, thank you. Can I say one thing? You may say one thing. If it is
I just
short.
want to, having heard wonderful things about council is having had the opportunity to ask our CAO, having heard what the others have said. And I just want the rest of council to know that I will be supporting this, and that I appreciate the staff work, and I just challenge the next council to continue the work that has begun and the hopes and dreams of many young families here to do the next phase. So I just want to clarify that I'm not in opposition. I need to ask the questions of what else is there, and what about these other things that have been continually spoken about for many years.
That is appreciated. Our approval thing, or but that's meanwhile building the library and the Tonquin Trail and everything else. But I love your commitment. Thank you, Councillor Thick. Okay, so let's turn our minds to the motion then.
I'll move the recommendation that staff develop a grant application for an indoor recreation facility through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Community, Culture and Recreation stream, including developing detailed design drawings, development of a business case, engaging a grant application writer, and the preparation of a borrowing bylaw.
I'd like to second that.
Well, we don't record it anymore, but opposed, motion carried.
2-minute recess.
Okay, 2-minute recess. Anyone opposed? Thanks. We have only a few more things to get through. I could use a 2-minute
Go
recess.
down to the washroom, was it refixed?
I think you have to take.
You have to go,
You have to donate. There's a toilet outside now.
Actually, walk across the road.
For the fire hall. There's one upstairs too.
I volunteered for helping out with topics. Sure. Suggestions, giving you a call.
Okay, sounds good.
And set the meeting and all of that.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to. Perfect. That would be data or
They did not they drop in things off and you know, picking them up and using for toilet.
Yeah, and the just once that door comes back to
It's a good time to be here. Yeah, I saw that there's no one. That's awesome. That's great. I don't know what I found. And how's Merca? Nice to get you guys.
Yeah, it was the left coast. It was just fun. And then another. You feel like resistance. Yeah, you know what, I can like make it to the
She's a Washington.
That would be nice. So obvious.
That's so perfect.
And then I like walk by again and I can tell you're making one letter. And then I feel like he's actually.
Dividers, yeah. I thought I saw someone walking.
Geez, what happened to the office?
Not for public consumption. We're going to talk about it tomorrow. I'm just not sure who's actually writing it.
How's your weekend? 2 turkey dinners.
Agency to
Yeah, lots of
get
great
this in
walks.
place.
That was the best day though.
That was beautiful. Awesome.
Trees. Her nickname. You failed to mention that you'd be one.
Does Elise pause the camera during a recess, or
Say that again?
does the camera get paused during a recess, or does it just go?
You know, I don't know what used to happen. I'm figuring it out now. So maybe I'm able to cut it.
Oh, I see.
I didn't pause it.
Right.
Just cut it out.
Had to, oh, I see.
So I'm not sure if I should have paused it.
Let's see what I was going to say. Oh, I know what it is.
So you need no enclosure? No enclosure?
Well, I imagine there's minimal.
Yeah, you have to pay the euro. It's not spend a penny, it's spend a euro.
More enclosure than what they were currently using.
Oh, I see.
I guess.
We actually for Thanksgiving.
But,
Well, maybe what we could do is devise some sort of like this sort of bag that came over your head or something like that. Or like,
Well, when you got in chat answer, you got issued to a bag to put up your head.
right?
You know what I think the
Take
problem
mine
is,
off now.
is that all the public facilities are paid there, right? So
Yeah.
people don't want to pay, so they.
Or maybe it's like the shuttle, you make it free, you want people to use it.
Yeah.
Maybe you should be paid to use it.
Like buying wine.
Maybe if you use that, you could partner. What's that? Are you fan of yourself? Just
Okay. I think we can continue. All right, 4 of us that went. And
So you
maybe
have to mention their
a minute or two on highlights for, do you want to start, Councillor Anderson? Are you alphabetical?
start.
I'll just be alphabetical. Okay, Councillor Anderson will start. Let's hear it.
I guess I'll start with sort of a personal highlight, and I reported on this in the CDAC committee as well. Dorothy and I just went on a art walk here. I noticed maybe you brought those back.
Mo
but-
brings them all the time.
But anyways, Whistler has a number of public art installations, and you can pick up a brochure and sort of follow a map and find the public art installations. Just note that we're beginning to develop an inventory of public art in Tofino, and I hope that we'll get there one day. Also, I had some free time on Monday afternoon and went to the O'Dane Gallery there, which is an amazing facility. People were able to pull together the funding to put an amazing gallery there featuring history of BC art and also an amazing architectural feature. So yeah, there's some inspiring things like that in Whistler. I think all of us that went sort of tried to attend different workshops, and the clean growth environmental workshops. So I attended Green Innovation and Clean Growth seminar, which was very informative. Some of the items of note is that it's to have energy plans in place, which actually I was surprised that it's not more. What came out of all these workshops is that more and more funding, $7 billion or something, will be coming available in opportunities of all sorts. I guess that's private and public, for advancements in the green economy. That's not saying it's one funding stream, that's an estimate of what's coming before 2030. And so there's going to be lots of opportunities for innovative thinking in all sorts of ways. Another interesting bit of information was that local government influences 50% of climate action. Through zoning, the types of housing we build, through the type, varies from rural to urban quite a bit, that number. But it's just quite interesting to know how much impact a municipality can have. And then finally, it was expressed that how important it is for communities to have plans in place, but also to resource those plans to have any action. So somebody isn't just sort of doing it off the side of their desk or something. But again, it depends on how much resources you, or what size your community is, whether or not you can do that. Oh, no, that was part of this. I think it came up that Smithers has an actual municipal reserve fund that can only be used towards initiatives. So that was an example, I thought, interesting of what small communities can do. Another interesting clinic I attended early in the morning was called Jump to Jewels, and that was about using your waste stream to generate energy. And Salmon Arm, for instance, has a landfill site where they capture energy, kitchen scraps and whatever methane that basically comes out of the landfill there. And this was about turning it into reusable natural gas and then getting it back into the natural gas stream. So it was quite dependent on having gas lines that services the Greater Vancouver or Greater Victoria area. Is 8 kilometers from a Fortis infrastructure, so they have some challenges there. So we are even farther from a Fortis infrastructure. But I did engage the Fortis person speaking at that afterwards, and there are places where they're looking into liquefying and capturing those gases. The particular interest of exploring this as we go into composting for our liquid waste management plant. And since that's located at the landfill, I think it's worth exploring how much, if we have the critical mass it takes to generate a real facility there. And we also have fish waste here that is trucked out of town from the fish plants. So I think there's something there. And yeah, visited the library and other notes, but my focus was kind of on
Great.
that.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Thick?
Yeah, I have to say, I really enjoyed going this year. It's been 7 years, and for the first couple of years, I kind of felt like I was treading water. I didn't really quite know what to do or who to talk to, but yeah, I think it's really good when we go every year. Councillor Anderson and I did go to the library, and I just sort of sat there and just enjoyed what was going on, and just thinking, what would this look like in Tofino? Wow. You know, kids are doing homework. Older people are sitting there reading by the fireplace. There's groups meeting in the breakout rooms. And it was just such a lovely feeling of vibrance. And this building is really serving an amazing purpose. So I had the other thing was just seeing, but just how programs under 2 are being so, she says sometimes there's 50 people in here. It's like, wow. And the kids do uses of the library that you never anticipated for or ever thought about. What do we need to think about in Tofino? And the woman there said, you know, the thing that we're getting the most requests for is Skype. We need spaces where people can Skype in privacy. So I thought that was an interesting idea, but just a very simple take home. As I spoke to you earlier, we had a very interesting conversation with the councillors at Nelson, and just understanding what they are doing or trying to do in terms of short-term rentals, and just how they looked at that whole thing, and they really put, in their words, they put the clamp down pretty hard. And they not only limited the number of business licenses on a block, they limited the number. I'm not sure how it works, but you're not actually allowed to own 2 homes where one is a vacation rental. So just a couple of side notes, and I think, I guess the highlight, I thought you spoke very well with Adrian Dix in regards to our hospital, and we had Scott Fraser there, and that was extremely helpful. I didn't feel that Adrian Dix heard us at all, but you know, I just keep thinking it's just more mud at the wall, and eventually some of it's going to stick. So that was my hope there. But we did make our case, and I think that since he loves Tofino, he might actually find himself here. But anyways, I think the highlight in talking, I think it is very worthwhile. Sometimes we scratch our heads and think, so why are we going? This is a lot of money, and do we really need to talk to these ministers? And I really felt that when we spoke with Rob Fleming, who's the Minister of Education, that he really heard. I'm not sure if I'm dreaming, but I felt like he really heard us. He is the minister responsible for libraries. And we talked to him about the fact the budget hadn't changed since 1986, and we talked to him about what our dreams and hopes were in Tofino, and how we wanted to open up a library that would be more inclusive of First Nations, not just in art, but actually in doing things and including them in that process. So I felt that that was a really worthwhile time, and I hope that, you know, to make a difference when you've got 20 people facing you every 20 minutes in a meeting like that. And I felt maybe what we could have done, one thought was, could we have given them a handwritten or a hand invitation to come to our community? So they have these big binders there of all the things that they collected from the different municipalities, and I thought, maybe we should have given a handwritten invitation. Maybe we could have. I think, as Councillor Anderson said, that my two or three highlights were actually some of the most useful sessions were the ones in the early morning. Those 7:30 ones, and I'm not boasting until they got up, but I'm just saying that that was where they put the reconciliation sessions. And that financial reconciliation session with First Nations, you know, sometimes you get hit in the head with things that you can do in your community from others' ideas. I felt in those sessions I was hit in the heart. You know, it wasn't like I had a list of 20 things. It was, I hear what you're saying. I felt that session on financial reconciliation was the highlight for me, so. Anyone wants to know more, talk about it, but.
Thanks.
Good.
Councillor Burke?
Thank you. So my report's 630 words, so I don't know how long that takes.
Average speaking speed is about 150 words per minute. So it should take 4 minutes.
So got there Monday for the Achieving Affordability, which is mostly focused to be done every 5 years. So I think we're about 3 or 4 years in now, so we're, you know, that's great. It's 25,000 are up to, and it's administered by UBCM. So we will be able to keep that kind of moving. There will be changes to allow municipalities to create rental housing zones. The ministry has created a housing hub which will focus on affordable housing for middle-income earners. They will be advancing innovative approaches to creating affordable homes for rent and purchase. They will leverage BC Housing Funds to build new affordable housing that does not require capital funding or ongoing low-market housing. This is, to me, is very exciting because I have been talking about this for a long, long time around developing housing. They will offer financing support for developers and second interest-free mortgages on title to support prospective homeowners to make the first mortgage more accessible and sustainable. So I think that's a big piece that's kind of been missing around the attainable housing. So other benefits include reducing or eliminating local insurance costs attendant to high ratio mortgages. There will be a land use best practice. So they're really robust in their response, and you get a sense that it's okay. We're digging our teeth in. We're just beginning, but we're going to support housing initiatives. So that was good. Then on Tuesday, as Councillor Thick mentioned, that very robust presentation on discussing financing reconciliation, focused on embracing constitutional values and changing the federal transfer payment system. Section 36 of the Constitution Act addresses equalization and regional disparities, promising all Canadians comparable levels of public service. The premise of this is financial reconciliation is that the distinction between taxpayers and First Nations is a false one. So on the creation of childcare spaces, up to $1 million will be awarded to local governments for new licensed childcare spaces within our own facilities for children aged 0 to 5. That's why I brought it up with the Rec Center. On cannabis, the key issues that are still being reviewed through the UBCM Joint Committee and are the completion of excise tax revenue sharing, regulating edibles, developing a full rural retail framework, and evaluation of provincial framework once implemented. Wasn't really sure that any of that was applicable to what we were considering, but you know, there might be things to glean from it. Climate action strategy will roll out in October and will be the overarching plan moving forward. So with them need for seismic upgrades to Wiccan Community School. Thank you, Councillor Thick, that was a great presentation. The possibility of middle school was mentioned. I like how you squeeze that in.
Right.
Collaboration of the district toward building a new library to put Tofino on the timeline for a hospital replacement. As Councillor Thick mentioned, the mayor spoke very well to that. Planning underway by us when we're starting. So liquid waste plan that is in the pipeline. For funding, consideration of split classification of residential homes used for nightly rentals, RMI and MRDT funding support for changes, and underscoring that Tofino is very pleased with the online booking tax to be used for housing, because that's not the feedback they're getting, housing, but needs support of tourism operators. So that's not the online funding, it's the other. Met with Deputy Minister of Jobs, Skills and Trades and discussed recruiting challenges in the culinary industry. So there was a town hall meeting and I had spoken about some of the challenges we were having, and then the Deputy Minister caught up to me and said, let's sit down and talk about it. So I passed some of that on to the culinary sector as a result of the roundtables. Recreation cultural facilities funding in communities, and well, I misunderstood some of that. So. Councillor Anderson and I did the self-guided public art walk, and I stopped and visited Mo Douglas at the Arts Council Centre. Some of my outtakes: create a best practices standard for seasonal worker housing. Review that convenient covenant and development agreements are respected and are being upheld. Just one of the things that I don't think that we really have any mechanism in the municipality for checking, if people are doing that. So undertake a childcare needs assessment at 5-year anniversary. Vacation rental licenses not transferable, or are they? Speculation tax could or should include resort municipalities. So that's my report. It was, like others have said, it was really fantastic. I haven't gone for the last 3 or 4 years because it was the same government, and except for last year, and I just really didn't feel that we were really being heard. Instead of that, had to do with conversations we had about emergency planning and things like that. But the tone of this was just so different. It was so receptive. It was very constructive. It felt like there was movement forward, and I was really excited about that. And the last thing is keynote speaker Arlene Dickinson talked about entrepreneurship, which just spoke to me volumes. And
Great. Just a few highlights from me then. On Monday was the Resort Municipality Initiative meeting with all the mayors and CAOs, and it is very heartening that we're going to have our agreement extended for 3 years and that we're going to see a significant increase in funding out of that. So, and the expansion of the scope into some emergency planning or emergency management. As always, a great meeting with the mayors and CAOs. I agree with you, Councillor Bart, that the government we have right now is very receptive and they're listening. But one thing I think that they're not getting quite yet, despite all the advancement they've made in supporting housing, is in my 2 meetings with Minister Robinson, one with the ACRD specifically about housing, and then the one that we had as council, quite understanding the challenges that rural communities face when trying to develop affordable housing, and that we don't have access to the nonprofit sector that urban areas have, that have capacity and are already rolling with projects, and that even for us to build that capacity costs money, and there isn't support for that kind of development right now. And when we tried to explain that to the minister, I'm still not convinced she completely understood us. So I think there's some work to do there, and we will continue to do that work, I'm sure. Also, just building on what you said about talking to the minister about the liquid waste management plan and the tremendous costs before our community, and some of the ideas and discussions that we've had here around consumption sales tax right now to what we think more fairly allocate the cost of building that kind of infrastructure to support the tourism economy. On the childcare facility, it was nice to see Tofino was recognized for being one of only 2 municipalities in the province that actually runs its own childcare facility, and being invited to speak at a panel about that was terrific and really well received. And on the subject of the funding that's coming forward, it'll please you and everyone else to know that there is a plan afoot to apply for funding for an action plan on a regional basis, where the 4 governments, Port Alberni, Ucluelet, Tofino, and the ACRD, will be approached to collaborate together. It'll be so that there's a inventory created and an understanding of where our childcare needs are, looking at all licensed spaces, and that an action plan is created that'll be very relevant for Tofino and for the entire region. So that's really great. And then I also understand that School District 70 is having a conversation about applying for creating childcare spaces at Wickeninish Community School. So that is something which is also really good news, because we certainly need spaces. Also nice to see Tofino recognized again for our short-term rental enforcement program, and seeing what other municipalities are doing, and then coming back to the management side of things. So enforcing the rules is one thing, and examining the appropriateness of the rules is another thing. So I think what you said, Councillor Thick, about Nelson and some of the other, now that other municipalities are regulating, seeing how they're regulating and what the successes and challenges they're having is something I think we really need to turn our eyes to. Yeah, so that's probably about it. Just the last thing on come to Tofino, and the mayor of Euclid has done the same, I think, so we'll get him out here, and hopefully he won't get sick. So there you go. I just want to say too, after only 6 UBCMs for me, not 7, I still always get a lot out of it, but what I really appreciated about this one, and I just want to thank our staff for the support you give us and being ready, and Bob for being there and being there at all of our meetings, but also for every councillor showing up at every meeting, except that I missed the one with the education minister. I think it sends a really strong message when we're continue in the future. Okay? Great. All right.
Can I add one thing? I forgot to mention.
If it's 30 seconds or less.
30 seconds or less. I went on the Whistler housing tour. It was like 75% of
workforce
resident housing, employee housing basically, and they've achieved 81%, I think. So anyways, my jaw kind of dropped. They've created 6,500 spots, and if we came any near that proportionally to our population, we'd be doing amazing too.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move into, we have 2 notices of motion, and that would just conclude the business in our open meeting. So the first one, Councillor Thick, do you want to read your motion?
Yes, and the title is wrong. It says downtown parking plan amendments. So.
No, you're going to start with the significant tree.
Yes, I know.
Oh, okay.
I'm just reading page 95.
I'm on page 2 of the agenda.
Be directed to bring forward options for the protection and preservation of significant trees on public and private lands within the District of Tofino, including but not limited to updating the District of Tofino Significant Tree Bylaw number 856/2001.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. You want to give us a 2-minute summary?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the words of many people coming forward to this council over the last 6 and 7 years have not really fallen on deaf ears, but sometimes it takes a long time to process how the words of Christine Lowther, Joanna Straightley could actually, how actions could be taken that might make a difference in our community. Almost 20 years old, you know, and limited to only one tree, the Ike Street tree, doesn't really capture the changes that are happening in our community with subdivision, with a lot of potential development on the books for the next council. So I will not be in a decision-making mode on this one. I'm putting forward the idea that we need to consider regulating, prohibiting, and imposing some requirements in relation to trees. And the community charter does give the council this authority. So it's well within our own properties, and soil erosion and bird habitat are all documented in the OCP. I mentioned in particular the old growth cedars and the tree buffer zones as provided by the Krumholtz. And if it's all right with you, I wanted to read this 1-minute poem by Joanna Straightley, who sent me this in the spirit of the Arts and Cultural Heritage Plan that we spoke about today. This is the poem, the trees on Cox Bay, the Krumholtz, inspired her to write this poem. May I read it? Mm-hmm. Becoming Worthy. I try to their backs to the spray, bent low over walking sticks, each step growing. In slow succession, season after hellish season, the wounded fall, crawl up the rocks on bark-scabbed knees, troops at a beach landing, helpless, their skeletal fingers reaching for purchase, shelter, earth, even as it trickles out of grasp. I cannot write the trees. My pencil is not enough. I am not enough. Perhaps if I take root among them, wearing only my skin, penitent, crouching, my back to the spray, while I etch their shapes into my hands, read their bark, their crooked lifelines, grooves of the heart, elusive on the roots, on the rocks, slapped by monstrous waves, scraped raw by barnacles, scar tissue over every inch of skin, hair streaming windward in salt-rimmed strands, lichen crusting my eyes. poem written by Joanna, inspired by the Krumholtz trees of Cox Bay. And I feel that they're very, I didn't find that poem out until yesterday, but I feel that they're very, these two in particular be considered in the significant tree bylaw for the district of Tofino.
Thank you.
Well, somebody can always claim, oh, it was threatening my house and cut it down, that there's, it drives up the cost of development to work around trees, which always left a bad taste in my mouth because I feel that Tofino represents the spirit of Tofino, what we stand for involves standing trees and protecting them. So I think this is an interesting or a good sort of side door to bring in that is to actually legitimately protect. Well, it's very characteristic of our beaches, and it's not something you can replace. A lot of our developers, we saw this at Sea Otter. I was under the assumption that a green strip along the highway was to be preserved, and to my shock, there were 3 or 4 big trees came down. Developers seemed to think, oh, we'll just replant and that's good enough. And we saw what happened up on Gibson Street where an urban forest was converted into a gravel pit, basically. I guess they'll replant, but I don't see that as what Tofino stands for. So I would like to see us push forward with this, take it to staff, see what they can bring back for, well, if we've talked about it before, came up with the idea of people voluntarily putting trees on their property into a protection bylaw. And I like that as well. I think that'll speak to some of our values as a community, as a tree-loving community. So I'm happy to move forward with this notice of motion.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson?
And that tree bylaw was put in place, and I felt like at the time that inventory of trees that would somehow grow, and it hasn't. And so I think it's important that this come forward. Thank you, Councillor. And to try and get more robust inventory of not only trees but other significant group of certain types of shrubs. Or I think Mr. Jim Darling brought in an example of on Tonquin, how that little islet is getting sort of torn apart by erosion, by people climbing on it and tearing the soil away from the roots and so on. So in a sense, I'm going to support this, particularly because of this attitude to protection, not just focus on a tree, but on areas and features that it might be a rock outcropping or something that might be threatened to have to move or something. But so I don't know where to get there, and I don't think this specific motion will get there, and I don't intend to change it. I'm going to support it as it is. But I think there's a bigger picture thing that as we go forward with the OCP or something, maybe some of those specific areas should be identified as growth and also irrecoverable if they're gone. So that's what this motion has sort of got me thinking about. Not just trees, areas and other types of features in the environment that deserve protection.
Thank you.
The reason that I never brought this forward is that there are elements in our community who, as soon as they hear the council is considering tree protection bylaw, start their chainsaws up just in case. We've seen that happen egregiously in the past. So we want to be very delicate about what we're putting forward and want to make sure that we're not talking about a sort of blanket bylaw against tree cutting in town. That, as Councillor Anderson said, we're looking at significant features, irreplaceable features that that kind of reflect Tofino's geography and our spirit as a community.
Thank you. All right, the next notice of motion from Councillor Thick I'll read is that staff consider amendments to the District of Tofino Downtown Parking Plan and Parking Policy for report back to Council to account for emerging parking issues such as, and then there is a list of 8 points, which I won't all read out, or 7, sorry, but it's a good list, thank you. Got it in our package.
I'll make that as a motion.
Nope, Councillor Thick made the
Oh,
motion. It's for
right.
notice of motion, but
Yeah,
you may
that's right.
second it. All right.
Okay, thanks.
So Councillor Thick, a short introduction?
Just to say that in discussion, and again, I realize it's October 2018, and I know what that date means for me and others, but you know, sometimes these things take a long time to percolate before it actually comes down, and what is it you can actually do? I'll just start with the first one, and we've talked about that, but you know, our parking spots are 21 feet, and that's why I said 20 feet. Those are, I think, the exact measurements that BC Ferries uses for over height and extra length. So I just put those in as a suggestion because maybe that's something that is common practice. Overnight sleeping, I've spoken to quite a few people who feel not only that their safety is compromised, but also that the environment is compromised due to people using the woods as a washroom. Loading zones, we've talked about that, fines and space. I spoke with a couple of people in our community who are dependent upon accessible parking spots, but maybe would not see their voices being, you know, heard in this environment. So I put that forward as another idea. For example, outside the co-op, the accessible parking spot, I would think, would be the one right in front of the door. However, I'm just leaving that up to staff. Informal angle parking such as exists along the skate park and may end up, I see it happening already on Gibson's where the width of the vehicles compromise. There's a problem I see with boat trailer parking, and especially at the school. There's boat trailers left there for months at a time, and similarly with people camping there for days and weeks at a time, according to a person who lives opposite. And in consultation with our mayor, I think that we brainstormed this last idea, which is basically what we have been talking about, was how do we communicate what it is we have. And extra thing, I'm sure you've read it, is just that, you know, we are offering to the tune of 200,000 or so this shuttle service, and perhaps in order to accommodate these ideas that I put forward, that needs to be beefed up or extended or more frequent. But I'm just suggesting that these are problems that we have ruminated, and we've seen letters and pictures ad infinitum, and I've just put them together in one idea here, in one motion, to suggest we need to look at the impacts of what is happening, tourism, these emerging issues then need to be dealt with and incorporated into the parking bylaw.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I support the intention of your motion, and I want larger planning process, and that parking is one piece. So to your point about the shuttle and any changes that are to be made in the way people park on public roads, and the changes in the shuttle and other opportunities for cycling and safer walking are all part and parcel with that bigger picture. And I expect we will see some changes.
And I realize too that there's many more issues. We've talked about restaurants, we've talked about offshore, all of those things. All I'm saying is, this is what I think we can do. Why don't we start here? And those other things will have to come forward with the next council. I'm just suggesting, this is what I've seen, this is what I see as a problem.
Counts for some of the emerging issues or things that we've seen over the last 4 years, and there are other things too that can be accommodated. All right, I'll call the question, then all in favor? Thank you. None opposed? Motion carried. Okay, so our last piece of unfinished business is the Committee of the Whole recommendation. And this was around the increases to the capital and infrastructure levy and what the Committee of the Whole had recommended to Council to put forward into the first draft of 2019 to 2023 financial plan. So Nyla's here to answer any questions that we might have, but there's no presentation on this because we went through it before.
And with the recommendation.
Okay.
Second.
All right, so it is moved and seconded to the 2018 to 2023 financial plan. I'm not going to read them all out. They're in the package though, from 2019 to 2023, starting at 1.2 million and increasing to 1.96. Councillor Blanchette?
Well, I voted against this at the COW, and I'll be voting against it with these numbers. Today, I think this is being over-conservative and really increasing the taxpayer burden at a time when we've got many other things coming on that are being added to the taxpayer. This is, you know, it's a 6%. Over 5 years, it's over a 30%. Timing is wrong, given the liquid waste management plan, given we've had, you know, two on this agenda, a rec facility and arts funding that I think are more, that'll give the citizens something. It'll sort of have a tangible result on the street, as opposed to this, which is more of an accounting result. And I'm not entirely convinced by the rationale behind it. Is that it seems to me tax burden. For instance, if we borrow, say, $1 million to build a rec facility, by this rationale, we also put aside a bunch of money to replace that rec facility at the end of its life. And I think there are grants for replacing such facilities. And, you know, with all this time we've gotten along, you know, in an ideal world, we would all have $50,000 in a bank account to replace our roof, which we know is going to fail. Our car is going to fail. We would all be saving up. But the way we do run our lives is that when our car breaks down, we get a loan and then we pay the loan off. So we're kind of doing it future-based. So, you know, I would like to see us start building these C&I levies, but I would say, you know, tops $500,000 a year. You know, they average out at $1.6 million. So I would rather see some much lower numbers on these, fully acknowledging that the rationale makes sense, but with liquid waste construction, liquid waste operating, affordable housing, and on and on and on. You know, I really can't support these kind of numbers being loaded onto our tax bill.
Thank you. Councillor Bart?
Yeah, thanks. There's a number of points you made, and I'm completely 2019 forward financial plan. I do think there are a lot of questions and things to be answered, and I think assumptions, you know, there was a 10% kind of application around that risk, and, you know, there's various things which I know Director of Finance is going to go over with the new council, and, you know, more will be known in a lot of quarters, and that process starts this fall, so for the coming few months, I think there's room to work with it, but I think it needs to be in the plan, and if those are the numbers that go to that plan, I'm comfortable with that, because I think that there's more to be known to adjust if needed.
Thank you. Councillor McMaster, anything?
I don't do it now, we're just kicking cans down the road, and we've been doing that for too long. And it's going to be painful, but I think we have to bite the bullet.
Okay. Councillor Anderson?
Yeah, just reflecting those comments. These numbers would not be so high if it was started a long, long time ago. And it reminds me of the deferred maintenance that the library was challenged with at one point, and they had to put in some drastic increases that were phased in, sort of peaked and then plateaued, and then they start to taper off as those facilities are upgraded and Rubin point, and maybe these numbers will get reworked as we look at it deeper, but it has to be included. We're seeing such streets as Lynn Road crumbling before our eyes without having had a plan to replace that, other than hoping a grant comes along where we're going into debt all at once. So it's really important that we get this in there and have further discussions about how exactly these numbers will play out, because we might want to phase them in differently or so on when we get into.
Thank you. Great, we'll call the question then. All in favor? Those opposed? Councillor Blanchette opposed. The motion carries. Okay, so that brings us to question period, where anyone in our audience can ask a 2-minute question. And Yarmouth, please start us off.
It's not a question, but I did want to take this opportunity, because we're at a time of change, to thank the council, mayor, to this point for everything. It hasn't always been easy, but we've always talked through our issues and moved forward and communicated. And I'd also like to thank the staff, because I know they do a lot of hard work. Like, we may not agree on everything that's been said and done, but we are all working diligently to do.
Questions? Mr. Reporter?
Yeah, I got 2 minutes about the same thing. About the gym. Aaron's report was awesome, and that's a long-standing process, so I feel super well taken care of in terms of understanding it. But there was 2 things that I need clarification on. One is, Mayor Osborne, you had suggested kind of at the wrap-up that the idea or the money will be going towards the community will have a say. Is that through a referendum? Would there be a referendum with this project?
Yes, if there's a borrowing bylaw that council brings forward, then it has to have an alternate approval process or a referendum to approve the borrowing.
Madam, please know what an alternative.
An intent to borrow money by stating what the money, how much money is being borrowed and what the purpose is for. And if 10% or more of the registered electors come forward and state opposition to it, it forces the municipality to go to a referendum.
So would that automatically happen first before we schedule a referendum?
It'll be a council decision.
Okay, so
Whether, it's kind of like negative billing with your cable.
Do we have any idea of a timeline for when either a referendum or an alternative process would be held?
Borrowing bylaw to third read before we submit our application, but any sort of, I'd have to defer to Niall, but probably in 2021, I imagine. I'll defer to Niall, yes, I would, now I'm going to.
At least 2021.
Yeah, so to get it to third reading, we don't need to go out for approval. It happens after that. And it can be, it is dependent on when and if the grant is approved. I think we may want to wait until we see whether we have the funding or not, and then we would proceed. So that doesn't give an exact answer, because we don't know when the decision will be made on the grant, but likely
We do know that they're not planning on announcing anything until the fall. It'll be fall 2019 when we're going to find out about the grant.
Late 2019, 2020.
What I'm hearing is though that the town.
Yeah, you got to show them what you want to do. Yeah.
And then the second one I had on that one was Councillor McMaster, you had suggested that after they commented about the pool, you had suggested that maybe if we move forward with this, if we're successful with the application, everything goes ahead as planned, the multiplex might change their priority from a skating rink to a pool. Are you suggesting that that would happen because Tofino had gone forward with the gym, or are you suggesting that that's happening regardless?
I'm suggesting it might happen because Yakul would have a gym, Tofino would have a gym. If I was on the multiplex committee, I'd be deciding, well, in light of that, what do we really want to do? Well, I'm not on the multiplex committee, so.
They're just going to change their priority, and I'm wondering what the...
Well, I think, they've got an ice rink and they want to use that ice rink for other purposes. I think those other purposes would disappear because people would stay in Tofino.
There it is, man. Thank you very much.
Can I just speak or ask something? You had said that it would be after we had made the grant application or when we went to borrowing that the plan would be before the community? Is that what you meant to say? Because this plan for this rec facility, it's kind of had its germination back in 2012, I think, or...
I think that the work that
This plan.
Yeah, that's specifically the referendum.
But yeah, it's not the first of the public processes. This is a result of public processes.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much.
Oh, can I just have a comment?
Mr. Heisterman, you may.
Thank you very much. I just really want to comment on the Tourism Tofino presentation, and mostly just how, like personally, I felt like the presentation didn't have a lot of focus on, the personal resume on that, and they were critical, but it really kept the dialogue open, and it kept, the relationship positive as well, so I just wanted to recognize that. And say thank you.
Thanks.
I thought it was great.
Great, thank you. Okay. All right, someone to read the motion to move into a closed session, please.
Make a motion to move past one?
No, we don't need to do that.
Janice, you want to start?
Okay, I'll move that the meeting be
Oh, you lost your opportunity.
to the public pursuant to sections 91, to personal information about an individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent, and